April 16th, 1746. The 45 is nearing its climax. Bonnie Prince Charlie has come back again, but is it to a throne or a grave? Tune in to find out as our group refights the Battle of Culloden as it's never been seen before. Not again. In 1688, King James II of England and VII of Scotland was deposed in the Glorious Revolution. The crown passed to his daughter Mary and her husband William of Orange, who ruled as William III and Mary II. But James's son, also named James, did not give up the claim of the House of Stuart to the British throne. He eventually became known as the Old Pretender. His followers were known as Jacobites, because Jacob is the Latin form of James, and they liked their Latin back in the day. The Jacobites rose in rebellion in the 15, so called because it happened in 1715, and they weren't very original with names back then. However, they were defeated. There was another rising in 1719, known, unsurprisingly, as the 19, but it too failed. The years passed, and the Jacobite cause was taken up by the Old Pretender's son, Prince Charles Edward Stuart, known as the Young Pretender and also as Bonnie Prince Charlie. In 1745, Bonnie Prince Charlie landed in Scotland to raise a rebellion against the House of Hanover, who now ruled Britain. This rising was known as, wait for it, the 45. Originality was not a Stuart trait. The Highland clans had long been loyal to the House of Stuart, but initially gave Bonnie Prince Charlie a cool reception. However, after he raised his standard at Glenfinnan on August 19, 1745, many of the clans rallied to his side. A small government army led by Sir John Cope attempted to disperse the rebels, but they were quickly put to flight by the irresistible Highland charge at the Battle of Prestonpans. Bonnie Prince Charlie marched his army into England to claim his throne. However, the populace did not flock to his side, and promised French support did not materialize. Starved of men and supplies, he retreated to Scotland after having come within 182 kilometres, or 113 miles, of London. The Scottish army was pursued by a government force led by William Augustus, Duke of Cumberland and son of King George II. Cumberland ran the cold, weary, and hungry Jacobites to ground at Dromossie Moor near Culloden House on April 16, 1746. The ensuing Battle of Culloden was a complete victory for the government troops. Bonnie Prince Charlie fled the field and abandoned his army. Charlie escaped over the sea to Skye and then back to Europe. The Duke of Cumberland enacted a harsh retribution against the Scots who had supported the Jacobites. The English supposedly named the flower Sweet William after him for his victory, but in my native Nova Scotia, heavily populated by Highlanders who were forced to flee their homes in the upheavals after the rebellion, we remember him by a noxious ragwort called the Stinkin' Willie. Our club refought Culloden using the American War of Independence variant of Regimental Fire and Fury, with special rules for the ferocious Highland charge. But what's this? We're gaming with plexiglass soldiers? What's that all about?
Hello. I just wanted to talk to you about the World of Fun figures that I have for the game Jacobite Rebellion. Today we play the Battle of Culloden. These are paper figures done by Peter Dennis originally that have been ported over to plexiglass. So they're two-dimensional figures embedded on the plexiglass, and they come in two scales, 18mm or 28mm. I chose this because I didn't want to paint all the Scottish tartans. So it was what I considered a good way to get into it, and I was curious about trying out the figures to see if they work. Apart from being very light, so you have to be careful about how to handle them, they work very well. They look good from the front or the back, but they're only two-dimensional from the side.
I must say I enjoyed playing with plexiglass soldiers, Just try not to look at them from side on. The government army that fought at Culloden numbered about 7,000 men, consisting of 16 battalions of infantry, some independent companies, 3 regiments of horse, 10 3-pounders, and 6 cohorn warders. Though Culloden is sometimes thought of as a battle between the English and the Scots, many of the men who fought on the government side were Scots themselves, and the Jacobites were fighting to make Charlie's father king of all Britain. Today, the wings of the government army will be played by Eric and Bob. Ted will play the Duke of Cumberland, though he's about 3 times as old as Cumberland was at the time of the battle. But he's young at heart. Perry will umpire. The Jacobite army consisted of around 5,000 men. Other than the Irish pickets and the Royal Ecossais Regiment, 2 units of Irish and Scottish soldiers in French service, the bulk of the Jacobite army was largely untrained and was organized into units based on clans. There were also a number of tiny units of cavalry, which we have grouped together into 2 small units. The Scots had a dozen light guns, which were poorly served during the battle. The wings of the Jacobite army will be played by me and Mark, with Gary taking the role of Bonnie Prince Charlie. The armies are drawn up in pretty much their historical deployment. The flanks of the field are blocked by fences. As the field is a moor, we are treating it as broken ground for regimental fire and fury, and the 2 particularly boggy areas in front of the government line are treated as rough ground. All right, after all that exposition, we're ready to start the game. Eric moves the Argyll militia to take down one of the fences. Bob begins to advance on his flank. I am happy to see the government advancing, as it will bring the armies into contact more quickly and mean less time we will be under the fire of their guns. And under their guns we will be. Ted fires his cohorns, an indirect fire weapon that can fire over the heads of his own troops. The Highlanders stand and take it, and await the orders to advance. Finally, Bonnie Prince Charlie orders our troops to advance, as we have to get into range to use the Highland charge. The government troops continue to advance in steady ranks. They are urged on by the Duke of Cumberland, who has thrown caution to the wind. The artillery from both sides have been taking potshots, but the armies are now within fighting range. It's time for the Highland charge. Both Eric and I have been ordered by our respective commanders to hold our ends of the line, while the battle is decided on the centre and the Jacobite left. However, I want to see what this Highland charge can do, and advance the Clan Chatham. There will be one last turn of artillery trying to soften up each side. As Gary advances in the centre, on the flanks the Highland clans charge the government line. The Highland charge enables the Highlanders to shoot their muskets as they go in, and then count the cold steel modifier in melee. Normally, you can do one or the other. The Redcoats give me a volley, and the Clan Chatham is disordered with its charge checked. However, the brave Scots quickly rally and are ready to fight again. Eric's Argyll militia have dismantled the fence by one of the enclosures, and move to flank my line. Bonnie Prince Charlie coolly observes the battle. Eric sends Barrel's regiment against the Clan Chatham, but the Highlanders send them packing. Battle is now general all along the line. I am holding my flank as per orders. Bonnie Prince Gary is taking losses in the centre as he advances. On the Jacobite left flank, however, Mark's clans are pushing forward as Bob is driven back. Clans Chisholm and McLaughlin gather themselves for a wild charge against Monroe's regiment and the Royal Scots Fusiliers. Gary's attack goes in against the government battalions. Ted's troops are thrown back. On the right, Eric has attacked me again, but the interesting fight is on the left, where Bob has thrown everything he has against Mark's Jacobite hordes. Badly outnumbered, the situation is desperate for Bob. He really needs to win this melee. But he doesn't. Mark defeats him and pushes through the obstacle of the bog as Bob falls back. Eric has charged me yet again, and again he is driven back. The heck with the Highland charge, I'm liking the Highland stand. With the government line being driven back everywhere, Ted returns to what the Redcoats do best, disciplined volley fire. However, today it's not very effective. Bonnie Prince Gary sends his clans into action yet again. The combat is vicious, with no quarter asked or given. Scott fights Scott, as the McLaughlins and McLarens tear into the Royal Scots Fusiliers. The government centre falls back in disarray. On the left, Mark has destroyed Bob's battalions and punched a huge hole through his line. At this point, we decide to call the game. The government forces have suffered murderous casualties, while Jacobite losses have been trivial. With his right flank punctured and his centre in disarray, the Duke of Cumberland concedes defeat, and looks for a bonny boat to flee like a bird on the wing over the sea to some island somewhere. The House of Stuart has been restored to the throne, and Great Britain is now ruled by King Charles III. Never thought I'd see the day there would be a King Charles III. As the reigning monarch of Great Britain is also the King or Queen of Canada, I, for one, welcome our new Stuart overlords. I've always enjoyed haggis and deep-fried Mars bars. I'd also like to point out that there are many fine whiskies in Canada, particularly those from Nova Scotia and British Columbia. Or should I say, Scottish Columbia.
Hey, Bruce.
Yes, dear?
Have you seen my plaid skirt anywhere?
No, it's not in the basement. Don't come down. Okay, I gotta go. Thanks for watching and see you next time in the basement.